What are you looking for when you're buying a small city car? Well, that it's small, check. That it's agile, so it's easy to park, check. And that it's quite frugal, so it has a small, economical engine, check.
Nissan Micras always had smaller engines under the bonnet and rarely exceeded 100 horsepower. But you really don't need much more with a car this size. This 5th generation is definitely the prettiest though.
But despite being small, it still has to be practical. So, what about the passengers in the rear, which is very important? Well, this is my driving position here, so I'm sitting behind myself and it's reasonable space. I think you would be fairly comfortable. What about trunk space or boot space? Well, we got all of our stuff in there, no problem. There's still a little bit of space left, but don't expect to be moving places in this car.
Don't expect LED brake lights or turn signals, but you can get LED headlights. The interior is friendly, especially with the lighter colors, which liven up the car. Nissan had a few extra ideas on how to make the interior less boring. Interesting textiles. What about driving it? Micra is a small car with a small engine. You expect a lot of juddering and sluggishness. But is all of that true? What do they say? Don't assume things. Try them out yourself.
With smaller cars, well, it's usually the case that they're not all that comfortable a lot of the time, especially if you drive over these tiny little damaged, horrible roads, because they have a very short wheelbase, so the car is doing this. But I have to say that's not really the case with the Nissan Micra. However, it's also true that the Micra isn't really a very small car. I was driving down the road just a couple of days ago with this car, and I saw a Citroen 2CV, very nicely restored. Some gentleman was driving it, but I felt like I was driving a semi-truck past him while he was in this tiny little car. It was so cute. But yes, cars have grown quite a bit in the last 15-20 years. In any case, the other thing I really like with the Micra is that a lot of the times small cars are mostly a transport from A to B. Sometimes they are also a little bit fun, a little bit interesting, and fortunately the Micra does fall into that other category, the a little bit interesting and a little bit fun. Because, well, just compare this look to the previous generation. I already tested this new, not really new anymore, generation Micra, and it just looks so much better than that sci-fi bubble thing it was before. It really does. The other thing that I really like is how it looks interesting. A lot of the times the smaller cars are usually transports from A to B. They're made cheaply, cheap plastic, nothing really interesting going on, everything in black, and it's just a bit boring. But the Micra doesn't really fall into that category. It's a little bit fun, a little bit interesting. If you look at the previous generation, for example, and I already tested this new generation, even though it's not new now anymore, I suppose, a while ago, and I really like how it doesn't look like that sci-fi bubble thing anymore. And now it just looks interesting outside. Ooh, let's get out of the way. And And it's not just the outside, it's also the interior that I really enjoy. For example, this white part on the dashboard, it's a really interesting texture of the textile that brings it all out and makes the car just much more interesting, and also feels much more spacious than it actually is. And on the top of the dashboard you've got this semi-soft rubber. I like that. Not expecting that at all. I was expecting hard plastics. And over here by the gear lever you have this, I think it's leather, might be pleather, but you know, it's stitched, it's semi-soft. It gives you a feeling that you're driving a car that's more expensive than this actually is. There's something I don't quite get though, and that's the infotainment system. I like how it looks. I really actually like how it looks. It's quite tasteful. It still has physical buttons. The display looks nice. The navigation is excellent. But when I first sat in the car, I noticed it's actually tilted towards the passenger side. Now usually, if these things are tilted, you'll see them tilted towards the driver, because you're in charge of the vehicle, nobody else. This is a dictatorship. But no, it's tilted the other way. So I'm wondering, did they put this as did they put the infotainment in as a Japanese car because they have the steering wheel on the right? Or is that the design? I mean, is it an error in manufacturing? Or is this design? If it's a design, it's bizarre. I mean, it's very slight, the tilt, and you probably won't notice it after a while, but when you first sit in it, yes, you will, and you'll be scratching your head going, what? So what about the engine under the bonnet? Actually, that's Japanese, so it should be, what about the engine under the bonnet? Well, it's a 1-liter 3-cylinder engine, and as I always say the same thing, I'm not a fan of little 3-cylinder engines because, well, they usually have quite a bit of turbo lag. And it's sort of the same with this engine. If I go down to 1500 RPM in 3rd gear and put my foot down, nothing, 2000, okay, and then something happens. So these engines are definitely not diesels. Obviously the petrol ones are not diesels, and they do require a bit of a kick in the arse to get going. But once the turbo starts spooling up and they do get going, they can go quite a bit, and it's surprisingly how much they can go. So this is the weaker engine with around 100 horsepower, but you can also opt for the 115 horsepower one, I believe. So these two engines are available, and the interesting thing is with this one, it's got the 5-speed manual with reverse gear, and only with this weaker engine apparently you can get an automatic transmission. I believe it's a CVT. But it's quite interesting. It's a very small car, but you can still get an automatic transmission. Now the other thing is, once you do get going, like I said, it's quite peppy. Very interestingly so. You won't be racing like an F1 car, of course, but it's got absolutely no problems pulling, and when you get to a motorway, for example, no problem. 130 kilometers per hour, it's still going to pull. 180, it will want to still pull. Don't do that, but you know, it's very surprising indeed. So, oh, there we go, 2nd gear. Woo! It can be a lot of fun, even with these tiny engines. Come on! So what about the consumption then? It is a very small engine, a small car, so you would expect quite good economy. Well, I have about 5.8 liters per 100 kilometers since I picked this car up. Now I was driving both through cities and on motorways, just quite economically, maybe a little less so on motorways, but the average consumption doesn't really budge much. it's 5.8 to around 6 liters per 100 kilometers. And it refuses to go either way from there. But I have a feeling that if I were to drive it more economically, I could probably get it a little bit below 5.8 still. So I wanted to talk about, oh wow, look at these birds. I wanted to talk about the negative things about this car, and then I almost ran over a dog because all of a sudden he jumped out of the some high grass where I couldn't even see him, jumped out right in front of the car, so I can say with delight and dikke, as Allo Allo would say, that the ABS does work and no dogs were harmed in the making of this video, thankfully. I really do not want to drive over an animal, that's for sure. Or a pedestrian. Anyway, trying to calm down now. I did a little bit doing the Slovene version already. So, what do I not like? Well, the first thing, let me just stop here for just a moment, put my hazards on. That's what you get when you close the doors, any of the doors. It's not a thunk, a very high quality sounding, ooh, I'm going to be safe in this car thunk. It's a it doesn't give you the impression that you're sitting in something that will protect you until the end of its life. I'm sure that it's got high safety scores, but just the door sounds, especially from the outside, they sound even a little bit tinnier, a bit worse. So, a bit annoying, but oh well. The second thing is this infotainment screen, which is sort of tilted. Otherwise, I like the infotainment screen, like I said already, but, you know, it doesn't matter. That's a minor thing. The third thing is the turbo lag, which is a little bit evident in the low RPM range, but like I said, once you get used to the car and you know what to do, it's not a huge deal. It can be a little bit annoying, but oh well. But the fourth thing, and that's the major thing really that bothers me, are the seats. They're soft, they look quite interesting because they played around with the cloth and the textures a little bit, but I think they were made for maybe the Japanese audience, because, you know, the Japanese are more, and I'm more like that, or maybe they were meant more for younger females, which are about a fourth of me, perhaps. So the seats are comfortable, but it's this middle part here that is just too narrow, and it sort of presses you in, and it's not overly comfortable over long distances. And I wish it were adjustable, but unfortunately, whoa, it's not. I just tried to put it into 6th gear because I wasn't thinking, and that's reverse, so oops, nope. So, final thoughts about this car? I really like it. Yes, I know I was talking about all the negatives here at the end, but you know, no car is perfect. Not even the Mazda 3 is perfect. And that's a pretty close to a very good, perfect car. But I just really like it. I love the interior. It's really nice. It's fun to drive. The engine is peppy, and I don't know. It's just a good feel car. The only thing, these seats, I suppose you need to be a little narrower than I am, but oh well. Cool little car.
Okay, if you're of a narrower build, the base Micra costs just over 14,500 euros. For a fully equipped version with the more powerful engine and leather seats, you'll be paying 21,000 euros.